Hi, guys. I'm going to talk tonight about the book Destroyer of the Gods by Larry Hurtado. I'm going to start out with giving you an overview of the book. Going to take an in-depth analysis, in-depth look rather at chapter 2, and then I'm going to also give you a brief critique on the book. Now, one of the things that the thesis of what I'm trying to say about this book is, while the information presented in this book is not unique or deep, it is helpful in understanding early Christianity's place in the Roman world. However, the book would be far more useful if it was organized in a different format and if potentially offensive material that's not germane to Hurtado's thesis was eliminated. Now let's go to the overview. The one thing we're going to see is the book's thesis is that Christianity is distinctly different, or was distinctly different from all other religions, and it was not compatible with other religions. Hurtado actually did a pretty good job showing that and proving that. In addition to that, he stated that the theological differences also made the Christians act oddly and act unusual or even bizarre in Roman eyes. Again, did a good job of proving that, and hopefully, if we're acting the way Christians should act, both in Roman times and today, we should act differently because of our theology. And what he tries to do is he tries to expose the distinctives that are actually seen in the first 3 centuries of Christianity. Now, one thing that should be pointed out quickly about this book is it's not a technical monograph. It's not a PhD level book. That's intentional by the author, and therefore you can't judge him for not doing that. He wrote to the audience he was intending to write to. In the introduction, he also said he had a twofold purpose. The one was to examine how unusual and distinctive Christianity was in Roman times, does that well. Also to examine how many of these oddities have become accepted as normal practice in religion in modern times. Does a pretty good job of that also. And in the intro also, one of the things we're going to see is he actually has one quotation, I think one of the best quotations in the book. Classic liberal forms of modern Christianity have often been concerned to align themselves with the dominant culture, affirming its values, even shifting in beliefs and practices markedly to do so. I agree completely. And what's happened is the church often today, the church wants to conform to culture and not to the Bible. And we can learn from these first century church Christians. They did not conform to the Roman world. They did not conform to Roman culture, especially in the area of all the various different gods. That's something we need to learn. Now, when we start looking at chapter 2, the first thing we see is, according to Hurtado, is Christianity is not just different, but a completely different kind of faith. The only exception would be Judaism. And the reason for that is because Judaism also worshipped one God and rejected the other gods. This concept, except for Jews and Christians, was simply completely unknown in Rome. Now, the one thing that's important here is the Jews were excused for this. The reason? Hey, they've always worshipped one God. They've always done this since ancient times. Therefore, it's a national peculiarity and not an offense to the gods. However, if a Gentile converted, the Gentile couldn't say, well, my people have always worshipped one God and been monotheistic. It didn't work that way. So, therefore, as far as the Romans were concerned, by denying the other deities, he was being antisocial and dangerous. As a matter of fact, by this exclusivist nature that these people were taking, they were afraid that it could call down the wrath of the other gods, and they actually called the Christians atheists. That sounds a little weird, but what they're saying is worshiping one God is atheism because you're denying the other gods. Now, the one thing we've got to see also is that to reject the gods and the idols is what the Christians had to do. This was simply not compatible with Roman thought or Roman society. It didn't work that way. They even had their household gods and everything else. Christianity was unique in its beliefs and unique in its practices, and was distinguishable from the other religions. There's 4 distinctions Hurtado lists. That one is God is transcendent. That wasn't true with any of the others. God is a loving being who loves his created beings. Not true of the others. Number 3, there is only one God. That's the biggie right there. And number 4 is the uniqueness of Jesus Christ. The Romans didn't have a personal type religion where one person was unique in the religion. They were simply gods for everything you can think of. Now, let me get to the critique portion of this, because I've only got 10 minutes here. The first thing is that there are some positive things in this book. Number 1, there's substantial background information that's given out and would be helpful to many, many people. Remember, it's not a PhD level book, so it's probably not what we're going to get a lot out of. Honestly, I didn't actually see anything in the book that I didn't already know, but I've got 30, 40 years of just studying Roman history as a hobby and early church history as a hobby, so that's why. I got to give the book a pass on that because it's got a lot of good information in it as far as that goes. Secondly, it does expose some modern presuppositions that we have about what religion was and simply is not true. So that's something else that's good. It's a good book for a novice to an intermediate level learner. Now, there is some negative, though, and they're pretty big negatives in this. Number one, the editing of the book and the organization of the book. Chapters 1 through 4 were originally two sets of lectures by Hurtado. The problem is it reads like two sets of lectures. They're not integrated well enough into each other, and chapter 2, for example, a lot of rabbit trails. It just kind of rambles all over the place in many cases. Chapter 5 adds a lot of examples, but there's also a lot of repeating of what's been said in chapters 1 through 4. Well, the reason for this, chapter 5 was not part of the lecture series. My biggest problem with the book, however, is that for no reason, for no discernible reason, 11 different times Hurtado comes out and claims that the books were not authored by people that we claim they're authored by, and also redates the book to later times. The problem is none of this is necessary to his thesis, and it's not the topic of the book. The only thing he's doing is offending a potential segment of his audience. Not only that, he undercuts his own thesis because, for example, he posits the uniqueness of New Testament books, but then often turns around and denies the authenticity of them or the authority of them. Twice, he specifically admitted that disproving the authorship wasn't necessary for his thesis. With First and Second Timothy, he said, but whatever their authorship, we can certainly take these writings as reflecting an attitude, and he goes on from there. Point is, if he's saying whatever the authorship, why did he even bring it up if the authorship doesn't matter? It's not part of the thesis or the topic. The second thing is, he says, scholars differ over whether the epistle to the Colossians was written by Paul or by someone in his name after his death. But this is not critical for my purpose here. Well, if it's not critical for your purpose, why did you bring it up? Again, the only potential thing it can do is just, it's strange because it's potentially offensive. It's adding extraneous material, and he's not sticking to his thesis. That's the biggest thing I see here. He comes out in the book, if you look at, he denies Mark, he denies Ephesians, he denies Colossians, 2 Thessalonians, Titus, 1 and 2 Timothy, James, 1 and 2 Peter, and by implication, if you read carefully what he says about Mark's, he has to reject all four Gospels, Acts, and he also rejects Daniel as far as books that were not written by the people that are claimed to be written by. That they're pseudepigrapha, or there's some kind of, false authorship on them. Sorry about that. My tongue got tied for a minute. To conclude this, I want to say a couple of things. Number one, the book, again, does have value, but it really, really needs to be re-edited and take away the unnecessary theological bias. In addition to that, it does prove that Christianity was distinctly different in Roman times and not compatible with Roman religion. That is a big one. And that's also something that we have to realize. Number one, it created odd behavior because they didn't act like the Romans. But here's the real point out of this I think we should take away. We're not doing that today, and we should be. The church should be seen as distinct, unusual, unique, and different. And by the way, when I say unique literally means one of a kind. It can't be more unique or sort of unique. It's one of a kind. Rare or scarce can be, but not unique. We try too hard to fit in with culture today, when we should be trying to fit in with what God said in the Bible. I'm not saying we should be antisocial or anything like that, but we really need to be looking at what is important in the Bible, not what is important in our culture. Okay. The other thing I want to say again is this could be very easily, all these problems could be very easily fixed if he simply dropped the things with the authorship which aren't related to his thesis. The book would read just as well without ever bringing that up. Matter of fact, it would read better. And number two, some editing. Again, it really I'll give you one example. He brings up the cannibalism, secret orgies, and atheism were charges against the early Christians. He explains the atheism, which we talked a bit about, but the other two completely almost ignores them, and suddenly in his conclusion it pops up in the first paragraph again. The conclusion wasn't necessarily related to the book itself, and that's a problem in a lot of ways. That takes care of this project here, and I want to take just a minute or two to say something totally unrelated to this that I hope will be edifying to you. Again, that's the end of the critique right here. I have something I want to show you that I purchased about a week and a half ago and was able to get. If this were straightened out, it's about 9 inches long. And this is a Roman nail from somewhere around the 1st or the 3rd century. I don't know if it was used in a crucifixion or not. There's no possible way of knowing, but I'll tell you something. When I look at this thing, and this is solid iron here, okay? This makes Christianity real. This brings it down to, we're doing a lot of book learning in this thing, and it's good, don't get me wrong. I really thrive on book learning. But sometimes we've also got to look at, what did Jesus actually suffer and go through? I don't know about you, but I don't want this thing going through my wrists, okay? And my point being is, I think in this program sometimes we've got to realize There's a reality to what Christ did for us, and that has to change our behavior. Again, when I saw this, I jumped on it because I wanted one of these for a while, and just, this is an ugly piece of equipment. And I mean, it could be used for building also, obviously, but in crucifixions, it was ugly. And sometimes I think we have to remember it's not just about the books. There's a real reality to us that has to change us. And if it doesn't change us, there's a problem. Hope you guys have a great day. I'm going to sign off now and talk to you later. Bye.